low-cost DIY LED upgrades for your classic 350, your bullet 350, or your new going 350. If you want to save a bunch of money and do a full LED upgrade, including fixing Hyperflash, stick around and find out how, and you can find out how to do this cool stone guard on your headlight. Hey everybody, Mike here. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be working on Hazel, my 2023 Classic 350J Series Royal Enfield. And as the little teaser at the beginning of the video said, we are going to be doing low-cost DIY LED upgrades to my bike. It makes the bike so much more safe and visible, not just from the headlights, but also the indicators are brighter, and you have a lower power draw on the total system. So if you do stuff like heated grips, or external GPS mount or anything like that, now you've got extra power available from your regulator rectifier, and the stator won't have as big a current draw as you would from a halogen H4. I think the halogen H4s draw 55 watts alone. You're gonna have like a tenth of that or less from the LED version of an H4, and it's just a drop-in replacement. A lot of people will take and just swap out the entire headlamp assembly for an LED unit. I actually like the way the stock reflector assembly looks. So the goal is to keep it mostly stock looking, including the indicator assemblies, but get the benefits of the LEDs. And we also have the really cool stone guard. The main reason I went down the rabbit hole about this is because I really like the look, a vintage look of the wire mesh stone guard. And I couldn't see any way to use this stone guard and have a more modern looking multi-element projector LED headlamp replacement assembly with the halo and the indicators built into the headlamp. It's too much. This way you get the LED bulb upgrade and the benefit of that, but it still looks stock. Now, Royal Enfield has a whole new headlamp assembly, but I think they changed the wiring harness. It has a 4-pin plug on it versus just your standard 3-pin plug that any H4 halogen takes. So this would apply for people that don't want to deal with that. Or not want to go aftermarket. You keep all the stock parts, they're proven to work, you're just swapping bulbs out. This is what it looks like with the regular bulbs in it. The only thing that comes from the factory on a basic Classic 350J series are the LEDs that are on the instrument cluster itself, the Speedo. Alrighty, so this is basically everything you're gonna need to do the job. Got some hand tools here, some cutters, Phillips screwdriver, stainless safety wire. Definitely going to need the stainless safety wire for the stone guard on the headlight. Small stubby Phillips screwdriver, a longer Phillips screwdriver, some pliers, some needle nose pliers, some electrical tape. This will come in handy later. Some cleaner. It could be any kind of cleaner. I'm just using sprayway glass cleaner. Some zip ties. There will be, for this stuff here, affiliate links down below. I bought these myself. They weren't sponsored. The ones I picked out are probably some of the better ones for the job, and if I had to buy them again, I would buy the ones that I've got linked down below. Just read the description, you can find the parts. This right now is on back order. I reached out to the vendor of this part. Again, the link's down below. This is a stone guard for a Classic 350 and a Classic 500, but the older one. They were the UCE engine. This actually will work with a J series bike, but it takes a little bit of modification. It actually works really good and it looks cool. Don't have to do it to do the LED upgrades, but you know what? It looks pretty sweet, and the bike has this vintage look to it, and it kind of accentuates that. What you're gonna need bulb-wise is a motorcycle halogen LED replacement for an H4. It's a direct swap for an H4 halogen. This is a high efficiency LED. The newer style ones versus the one that I have, because I already had the parts, I'm gonna use them. This one has a voltage regulator on it. Some of the newer ones have it built into the unit itself, so that's the difference. You will have 1156 bulbs. These are just direct LED replacement for 1156, which is almost a de facto standard for indicator bulbs on cars and motorcycles, so that should be pretty easy to find. Taillight bulb, you guessed it, 1157. It's just a standard LED replacement for an 1157. All of these bulbs I'm using are just white. You can get them in different colors, like amber or red. Same thing with the indicator bulbs. I like to use the brightest white that I can, just because of visibility. The last thing you need are these little, I think they're interior lights, but I'll have a link in the description below for this. But yeah, it's like your standard either running light or interior trim lights, instrument cluster lights for cars. It has this little blade on it, and it just kind of slips into the socket. Particular ones I have, and the ones that I link, I'm pretty sure are not polarized, but depending upon who sells these and where you get them, you may have to turn them around because an LED has polarity, unlike an incandescent bulb, which you can run. The positive and negative doesn't matter which way this bulb goes in, but with LEDs, some of them are polarized. First thing I recommend you do is put some kind of towel or something on top of your fender, because you're going to be taking stuff on and off the bike. You may have to set the light down here, and you don't want to scratch it up. This could not be easier. All you need is a screwdriver. So I'm just going to take the screws out here. Alrighty. Hold on to that guy real quick. So there's two screws. They're threaded into the housing. This is cast aluminum, and there are actually threads tapped into it. A good thing to watch out for, because when you go to put this back on, don't over tighten it because you'll strip it out. But it's just hooked in, so you just rotate it up and it comes unhooked. You can see the hook right there. You just unplug it. Boom. You got this rubber boot here. And then that's the whole headlight assembly. It comes out as one piece. You got screws here. They're pivots so that when you go to aim the headlight, the reflector assembly pivots on the retaining ring. And then there's this bolt at the bottom. And the job of that bolt is to adjust the aim. So I'm pointing that out now because we need to mark that bolt before we take the headlamp apart, so that we can get it back in approximately the same location. When you're done, you're still gonna wanna aim the headlight, but there's no guide from Royal Enfield how to do it. Marking it gets you in the ballpark, but definitely re-aim the headlight. You don't wanna blind people. The LED's brighter, and it may have a different pattern. So you've been warned in advance. Easiest way to take this apart is you're gonna first back this screw off, and then you're gonna take these two pivot screws out. I've already gone ahead and I trimmed the back end of this out. So this is a kind of a water cover for the bulb. This whole assembly rests inside of that nacelle. So when this thing is mounted in there, you need clearance for the heat sink. That's the whole reason that you gotta do that. Now, how big this hole is, or whether or not you even use the boot, will depend upon the bulb. I'm just scraping the Sharpie up against the screw threads. Now, why am I doing this, you're gonna ask? Well, good question. So coloring this with a Sharpie or marking it with something will give me some idea of how much exposed screw thread there is. So when I take this apart and put it back together again, I can get some proximity of the aim point of the light. That's the only reason I'm doing it. I like to just loosen the screws on the side. I'll take them out in a bit, but for now, I just loosen them so that I can take the main screw out, or the adjuster screw. I don't know exactly what Royal Enfield officially calls these parts, but we'll call this the adjuster screw, and those are the pivot screws. How about that? That screw's backed all the way out. Now I'm going to back out the screws on the sides. Now there's a plastic washer that is in between the outer metal tab for the retaining ring and the headlight assembly itself. So you definitely want to keep track of those washers, because it's what allows the headlight to pivot on the retaining ring and be able to aim it. This washer gets sandwiched in between the retaining ring and the headlamp assembly, and then this screw goes through both of them and allows it to pivot so you can adjust the aim of the headlight. It's a pretty simple design, but it's effective. It works. I'm doing this over a towel, so when things fall out like that washer just did, I'll have somewhere for it to fall, so I'm not scrounging for it on my garage floor. I've chased down too many springs flying across the garage in the past. Now this screw can come completely out. This is your spring that holds tension on the headlamp assembly. And now, if I flip this over, because of this hook, this comes out the easiest if you just pivot it from the bottom and then pull it up. It's a little bit of a fiddle to get it in and out of there, but there you go. So that's the, it's just like a plastic insert that's threaded on the inside. So there is your headlamp assembly, the reflector assembly. And inside there, you got your halogen H4. This thing with the Royal Enfield logo on, it's what they call a shadow mask. The light actually reflects back into the reflector and then is, you know, angled out. And all these little facets are what gives you the pattern on the ground. So it's important to make sure you get the right kind of bulb. It needs to be an H4 halogen, preferably ones that are for a motorcycle. Now then, they do make an entire replacement headlamp assembly that's LED for these bikes. They're aftermarket companies. If you look on eBay or Amazon, there's a gazillion of them, but I really like the way this looks. I don't like, at least for this bike, the look of a full LED assembly with like the little projectors and the halo and all that jazz. I like it to be just simple. Plus, I'm going to put the stone guard on it. So how do we do that? This ring here with the screws on it, it looks like it's a retaining ring, but it's not. It's actually there for looks because the lens on this headlamp is glued in. It's bonded to the assembly, like the whole thing is glued together. So that chrome trim ring is just there for looks, essentially. It doesn't do anything else. I'm going to put the screws back in even though I don't have the trim ring. And there's two reasons for me to do that. Reason number one is it will help retain the lens if for whatever reason that adhesive and the clips fail. And secondly, it locates the stone guard. There's no need to over tighten these screws. You can strip them out. It's a metal screw going into plastic. So why did Mike remove the trim ring off of this, even though we established that it's not really needed to hold this together? Well, this is why. This guy right here. You need it to necessitate mounting this. Well, this particular stone guard from the vendor in the UK is designed for the UCE bikes, the Classic 500 and Classic 350 they never sold in the US. It will work with this one. You just have to do it a different way. With my Sharpie, I marked which way was up so that I had the mesh pattern, you know, going vertically. So what you do is you align this on the lens so that it's straight up and down to the Royal Enfield logo, you know, because matchy-matchy and I'm OCD. But then I took a round file at the point where all the screws were when this was aligned, and I filed these little notches. So when you got this lined up correctly, and those little notches will actually index into the screws themselves. Now the screws won't hold it in place, but when this thing's in the headlamp assembly and we use the safety wire, it keeps it from wanting to move around. And this works like a charm. Now that I've got this assembly lined up, I'm gonna flip it upside down and hold on to it. And then carefully get it back into the headlamp retaining ring. Kind of have to fish it around the pivots. It's not hard, but you're also holding onto the wire stone guard at the same time. This is why those little index marks come in handy, because it helps you line this whole mess up. Put the main adjustment spring in first before I put the pivot screws in. I think it's a little easier to do it that way. This thing's gonna fight you and be fiddly for a little while, so it's good to have it sitting on a bench. There we go. This is why you don't want it screwed to the pivots, because you need to be able to pick the headlight up to get the screw started. And I'm holding my index finger on the end of the plastic nut to feel when the bolt's coming through or the screw's coming through. And that's far enough for now. So I can feel just the end of that, because now I got to get the screws on the side. And all the while I got to keep aligning, there we go, my stone guard. So I'll get my little retaining screws in here. The way I do this is I'll fish this guy in and then I'll pinch it with my fingers to hold it in place, because otherwise it's going to fall right through. And you're going to do this a couple of times. Trust me. And get in there with the screw once you got the washer, that plastic washer pushed in a little bit. With the screw, you can guide the washer around, and then you can start threading it in. But don't tighten it all the way down. Only thread it till you hit the shoulder, because you need to get the other side fished in. So it's kind of a balancing act. I'm sure some dude in India is cranking these things out by the hundreds on a daily basis, just laughing at me right now, because for him it's like super easy. See if I can get it first try. Look at that. Nice. I've had this apart before, and I have definitely dropped those washers. Believe me. So I'll start that screw as well. And I'm gonna leave it at right before it gets past the shouldered area. This is where indexing comes in really handy. So if I look around, and I've still got the ability to move the stone guard in relation to the headlamp assembly, I am clocking the stone guard until I've got it lined up. And right now it's not centered. I've got it lined up right now. I've got it twisted and centered based upon those little notches I filed into the stone guard. Now what I need to do is the safety wire trick here. Make sure you keep track of any cut wires or they're gonna end up in your tire. Just pull off maybe a foot of this stuff. So I got about a foot of the safety wire. I don't need all of it. So I'm just gonna kind of find the halfway point. And I don't even need as long as what I've got. I'm gonna bend this in the shape of a U. Like so, just with my fingers. Flatten out the ends so that the wire's nice and straight. Like this one's got a little bit of a hook on them. So I'm gonna bend that guy straight. What you're gonna do with this is, and I'm gonna do it with in the same spot on each side, look and see where the pivot screw is. And then follow it around to the front. And then what I'm gonna do with the U is I'm gonna straddle two of the wires in the grid through the retaining ring, just like that. Now when this is tight, you're never gonna know that thing's there, unless you go looking for it. And then do the same thing on the other side. Now you take the wire and you just bend it tight like that and twist. You only need a couple twists right now because you're gonna twist this harder with pliers. And then do the other side. But Mike, why would you just twist that with wire? Why would you do that? That seems so cheap. Well, they used to use safety wire on motorcycles all the time for bolts that they didn't want to back off. The bolt would get drilled through and then it would get wrapped in safety wire. There's actually a special pair of pliers in the crank that spins the head of the pliers to tighten the safety wire. That's why it calls safety wire. It's not just there because you're being cheap. In this case, I'm adapting a headlamp stone guard. It was never meant to fit on this particular bike. And I'm doing it with safety in mind, hence the name safety wire. So all you got to do is just get your pliers and twist. And that tightens the wire up. And you can over tighten it. It just needs to be snug. As you're twisting it, it's pulling it in tighter. And it will seat itself in those notches that I made, and that's what locates the stone guard so it doesn't move around. And that's it. Twist it. How tight is tight enough? When you see the wire start to curl in on itself like that, instead of just twisting, that's as tight as it's gonna get. It'll just keep bunching up and getting worse at the end. And it's more than tight enough. It's not gonna come off. These little wires are all you see. And when you look at this headlamp assembly, you won't really notice it. And if it really bothers you, you can always Sharpie or paint the wire itself. But it's stainless steel. It's not gonna rust. What I need to do is I need to neaten up my wires here. So I'm gonna cut off the wire to about, I don't know, let's say 1/2 inch. Do that to both. Then I'm going to take my needle nose pliers And I'm going to take this wire and I'm going to fold it over on itself. Make a U out of it. Just like that. The U that I just bent, I smashed it down against the pivot for the retaining ring. That will keep it out of the way from when you mount it back on the bike. And that's it. So I do the same thing here so you guys can see. I'm going to take this, I'm going to bend it in a U, bend it over here, smash it together, then I'm going to smash it down. This way, the sharp end of this wire that we cut isn't sticking out to poke you when you get your hand in here to pull the headlamp out. And that's not going to go anywhere. That is permanently attached at this point. Go ahead and tighten these pivot screws. Now, the pivot screws don't have to be reefed onto within an inch of their life because you want the headlamp to be able to pivot on them. If you tighten it too much, then it'll be too much stress on the pivot screw to aim the headlight. So it's only got to be just tight enough to do the job. You don't have to just, reef it in for all it's got. Use some restraint. All I got to do now is run this screw in until I see the ends of my black threads poking through and just a hint of the threads that aren't painted with the Sharpie. I screwed this in so I can just see the area that doesn't have the Sharpie on it. That should be in the same position that it was before. So there we go. There's a spring clip that retains the halogen H4 in place. The hook end on this side, all you got to do is just press down with your thumb and it springs up. Then you flip the lever up and out of the way. And now the bulb, it just comes right out. The thing about H4s universally is they're indexed. They have these tangs on them, the tabs, that indexes them in a specific orientation so that the pattern that gets projected out is correct. The thing about these with the heat sink is you have to fish that retaining spring in between the heat sink and the indexed ring. That's the LED, that's the halogen. They both have this retaining ring on them, but this one has this heat sink. So you just have to fish this guy in, and you may have to bend the retaining spring slightly to get it to work, but it will work. The bulb seats all the way down flush with the tabs aligned. And then all we're gonna do here, and this one's a bit of a bear because of the heat sink, I need two hands to do this, is, with my pliers, I gotta get the retaining ring under the heat sink. There we go. And then push that spring into place. There, with some fiddling around, I got it in place. Now, the only thing that holds this bulb in is this retaining spring. So you need to make sure that it's fully seated correctly, because if you're using a different style H4 LED replacement, and it's going to be different than what I've got here currently, then you might have to bend this, or you might have to temporarily remove the screws to get it to fit into place, but it should fit. And in the case of mine, it fits just fine. And if you look at the front, it still looks completely stock. Then all I got to do is put the boot back on. Rubber boots on, heat sinks out the back of the hole. This guy's ready to get mounted back on the bike. On mine, and maybe yours, depends, I've got this voltage regulator assembly here. It just gets plugged into the standard 3-wire plug that a regular halogen H4 plugs into. Now I have to find a place to tuck this up into the wiring harness, and the wiring harness is kind of pushed in 2 directions around the steering stem and the nacelle, and also the underneath of the speedo. I've also retrofitted my bike with a tripper, so I got an accessory harness in there as well. So you just have to be creative with how you're gonna fish this in here. And to install it, the hook at the top hooks in underneath. If you look, you can actually see the tab that's cast into the nacelle. You should not have to force the headlamp assembly into place. If you have to really push hard to put this thing in place, A, it's probably going to spring out at the top, but you are definitely pinching wires. If you have to force it, something's wrong. Take it back apart, retuck your wires, look to see how everything's going. You don't want to pinch wires and you don't want them to get cut. Start those screws by hand. Again, it's a steel screw going into a very thin piece of aluminum that's cast. And you don't want to strip them out. Get that guy snug. They do not have to be over tightened. That is it. Let me wipe my grubby mitt prints off of here. The big question is does it work? Well, let's find out. You got to start the bike in order to see the headlight come on. That's just how it works. So let's fire it up real quick. High beams. So here's a really great before and after example of doing the LED swap. Next thing we're going to upgrade is the marker running lights. I'm not sure what Royal Enfield calls. These couldn't be easier to change out. One screw retains it. You guys are going to be floored by how easy this is. Take off the retaining ring. Now then, get your grubby mitts in there, and you got to pull on the rubber that's around it. There's like a rubber socket this thing sits in. That's how it's mounted. So you fish that guy out, and now you just peel the boot of the socket off from the lens. And inside, pay dirt. Inside is pay dirt. We got this bulb. That's your standard trim running light bulb or dash light bulb from a car. And that's the LED equivalent. And it's just a simple matter of pushing it in and putting it back together. Because there's nothing that indexes this, it's just a rubber socket. Try to make sure that it's level, just for aesthetics. If it's all crooked, it'll look weird. Look like you didn't care to pay attention to details and you just threw it together. This has the Royal Enfield logo on it. I put the Royal Enfield logo on the bottom. I mean, really, you'd have to be up close to look at this, but I like to line stuff up so it looks like I made the effort to do it right. Line everything up. Get the lens in the rubber socket. And then push it back in. Now, if it's really difficult to push back in because the rubber doesn't want to slide, you can lube that up with a little bit of the window cleaner and it'll just slip right in. You got to give it a good shove, though. Don't be afraid, because it needs to be fully seated in there for that clip to hold it in place properly, or you'll bend the clip. Don't push on the lens. You got to push on the rubber around the lens. If you just push on the lens, you'll actually push it back into the socket. This would be a golden opportunity, if this is filthy, to clean it up. If the marker light is in position correctly, then this retaining ring should sit just about flat even before you put the screw in. And then just screw the thing in. Easy peasy. You can see this is the LED, and that guy is the incandescent bulb. This is almost a driving light. That's how bright it is. And it looks really nice too. It also matches the new LED headlight. I'm a sucker for LEDs, I really am. All right, let's do the other one. There you go. It's that easy. Then just test it real quick. Works like a charm. Alrighty, let's do the turn signals. So for the indicators, and this is on all four corners, I'm only going to show one so I'm not wasting your time. They're all identical. You only need a small Phillips screwdriver. You go in from the back side, there's a hole on the bottom here, and that's where the small Phillips screw is. Just loosen the screw. I don't know if it's captured or not, but you don't need to take it all the way out. Just loosen it. and the lens will pivot on this hook up and out. There is a gasket. It is just a strip of rubber that goes around. Watch for that you don't let it fall out. I mean, if it does, just fish it back in. You'll see exactly how it goes in. To get the bulb out couldn't be easier. Just push in slightly and then twist counterclockwise or anti-clockwise, as they say. And then it pulls straight out. Take the LED, do the same thing. These studs on these 1156 style bulbs, they're the same on either side. They're not offset. So it doesn't really matter which way you put them in. So it just inserts and then twists clockwise. Then just check the gasket, because I think I bumped it a little bit on mine. Now's the opportunity to look inside the reflector and clean any dirt that you see in here. The trick to putting this on is there's a index slot that you can see right there. You just push the hook up into the index slot. There is a ridge on the lens that will seat into that gasket. And then you just tighten the screw. And that's it. Make it snug, not over tight, because it's going into plastic. You don't want to crack that, dude. You just upgraded this to LED without having to spend the money from Royal Enfield for an entire LED indicator stock. You didn't have to take the nacelle off the bike to get the mount apart to put this on. All you had to do is change a bulb. Lastly, I'm going to wipe my grubby paw prints off of here. This seems to be a common theme there, Mike. Why, yes, it is, Mike. So just repeat that 3 more times. You're going to need a 10 millimeter, the elusive 10 millimeter, on a little tiny ratchet. I don't think you'd want to try this with an open box wrench. You could, but the feel up in here. There are 3 bolts. There are 2 at the bottom and 1 at the top that hold the whole assembly on. You have to remove all 3 to get this thing out. Alrighty, that's 2 bolts. Off comes the license plate and the bracket. You can see the studs that are there. These are actually locking nuts. They've got like a little special metal flange on them. They're not nylocks. Gotta reach way up in here for this one. Say ah. All right, Hazel, cough for me. That's wrong. All right, there we go. Who's the floss, Mike? I don't think Hazel would like that. Yeah, that third one's up there high, and it's a little bit of a faff to get after, but it's not impossible. That's it. Just 3 of these things. Hold this dude on. This is not very flattering for Hazel. Oh man, Mike, you're not right. I know. This just comes straight off. Mind your gasket. So there's a gasket that fits onto the tail lamp assembly. See this guy? Those are your 2 lower mounting holes. This gasket that goes all the way around it. This would be a great time to clean underneath. Dirt does build up here. Mind which side that the wiring harness is going into, because the tail lamp assembly won't want to seat fully on if the harness isn't tucked away correctly. This is a standard 1157 socket. So you just rotate it like that, and then it just pulls out. And there's your bulb. So that is an 1157 bulb. And see how these tabs are indexed? This one you can't get wrong because it's your combination stop and running / tail light. There you go. I mean, it just twists in place. But again, you got to make sure that those indexes are lined up. That's it. Then just plug it back in to the socket in there. And it's all indexed. I mean, you can see which way it has to go. It'll only fit back in there one direction, and that's it. There's a green and red wire for your right and left indicators. Those green and red wires straddle either side of the socket for the tail light. And you kind of have to make sure that it's still tucked that way, because otherwise you won't have enough room to push the tail lamp assembly back in place. It'll hang up on the wire and it won't sit square on the fender. Then you just push the stud in like that, take one bolt, and then start it so you don't have to hold this thing forever. There are rubber grommets that are in the fender that stay there. If they come out, you just have to push them back into the holes they came out of. This stuff is not very difficult. It's pretty easy. Then I put my license plate on, and if you notice, it might be hard to see from your angle, there is a little bit on the lens there that's clear. That eliminates the license plate. So when you order your 1157 for the tail light, if you're tempted to get a red one, don't. Make sure it's clear because that's what's illuminating your number plate. So all those bolts are started. Now I just gotta reach up Hazel's rear end and tighten some nuts. Oh, they're gonna kick me off of YouTube. Oh, I don't care. That shit's hilarious. All right. Let me screw my nuts in here. Hazel's tail. I cracked myself up. The stud for the tail lamp, I think, is just threaded into plastic. Don't over tighten it. You can probably break that thing off, and then you're gonna have to buy a whole new tail lamp assembly. Or get creative with JB Weld. The bottom ones for the license plate are so much easier to thread in. Oh my goodness. Be prepared for your arms to get filthy doing this too. Can I make another bad joke? I'm not going to. Something about rear ends and filthy hands. I'll let you figure it out. No, you're not. You ain't right, Mike. You ain't right. There we go. Snug these up. I'm just going to go and double check all 3 bolts. Make sure they're snug, not super tight. All right, it's all on, so let's test this out. Tail light, brake light on the handlebar, brake light on foot peg, and indicators. Right turn, left turn, hazard lights. That's the back. Right turn, left turn, cancel, and my hazard lights. The relay, which I think is a bimetallic, like analog kind of relay that these things come with from the factory, they need a certain amount of amps going through them. It causes it to flash faster. But I've got a fix for this that you can make yourself that is far superior than putting in load resistors. As you're sitting on the bike on the right side, you want to open this right side cover. You need your key to do this. And so this is where your battery lives, but it's also where you've got your fuse box and some relays. This bottom one, this is your flasher relay. It has a little loop of rubber that this clips into, and then just unclip it. We will be replacing this with a 4-pin flasher. Now there are all kinds of different flashers, and for the life of me, I could not find an indicator relay that was like this one. This is very similar to a 4-pin Honda style relay, but the connector is different. So I think that they made these proprietary to Royal Enfield. And this connector on the end of the pins, it is epoxied in place. You were not getting that off to swap the connector to a 4-pin Honda. And also, you wouldn't know what the pinout was. I'm gonna make a jumper harness for a 4-pin Jeep/General Motors flasher relay, and it will work. So you should be able to see on the back of the connector here, you've got a black, you've got a solid white, you've got a red with a white stripe, and a white with a red stripe. That is going to be your power for the coil side of the relay, and then the switch side and the power going out to the individual bulbs. That's it. That's what controls a 4-pin relay. So once you figure out which pins go where, you can use any relay. I've already done that work for you, and I'm going to show you how to do it. I have a link in the description to this exact flash relay from Amazon. So you need an EP26. It has a little diagram with the pinout numbers for the bottom of the relay. And what I'm doing is I'm making a jumper harness. So I'm converting from these pins to these much smaller pins that will go into the wiring harness on the Classic 350. I need to make one more jumper wire. All of this stuff I have links to the description. Wire, like good quality wire, but it's inexpensive. Exact connector kit. You're gonna need 4 of these, the smaller silver spade connectors, and you're gonna need 4 of the larger female spade connectors or the blade receptacle, and that will adapt the flasher to the wiring harness. Tools are up to you. I did put some tools in there like a pair of wire crimps. They're not the exact ones that I have, but they should work. Length of wire I'm using for my jumper is about 5 inches long. It just need enough of a lead to be able to tuck this thing into the area that you have in the fuse box by the battery, because it's not gonna fit on the little clip that the original one would fit in. So this wire is 16 gauge. I'm gonna put it on my 16 gauge. I'm gonna strip a little bit off. That's all the amount I need to strip off the end, but any wire stripper will do. Then you need some heat shrink. The pins are essentially bare. They don't have any insulation around them after you've been crimped because they're supposed to go into a type of connector. But in this case, we're kind of making our own adapter. Slide both heat shrinks on before we crimp the ends on, because you may not be able to get this over later. Grab my pins. Seat this in the wire crimper, and if you look at how the saddle is in the wire crimper, you can see where the 2 different parts of the crimp-on connector goes, like how it feeds in there. You just apply a little bit of pressure, you feed the wire in, only to the point where the insulation is right at the edge of the larger tabs. Takes a feel. I've been doing it for a while. Boom, like that. That's done. And you can see that the silver part of the wire is under the smaller part of the crimp, and the larger part is holding the insulation. That's exactly what you want. I'm gonna do it to the other end. Just start feeding it into the crimp tool. And the crimp tool should be marked as to the gauge of the wire, and your crimp tool may have different dies in it for different style of connectors. I think the one that I have the link to Amazon on has the ability to do all kinds of connectors, so it's a one-time buy and it's good to have in your toolbox. There we go. Now, if you had a multimeter, you can use a continuity or a diode checker or a beeper, and you can tone out each side to make sure that you've got continuity through. But you can also just visually look at it. And then you just need something to heat up the heat shrink and shrink it down. Boom. Jumper wire number 4 is done. So now all I got to do is just slip that on there like so. Now, I'm going to display on the screen right now a diagram of how this goes together. Now, I was not able to find inexpensive wire that had the same color code exactly how Royal Enfield has on it. In the wire kit I have, there is black and white, which matches exactly. The red that's on the jumper harness would be the red with a white stripe. And the white with the red stripe, I'm substituting with a purple wire because none of the other colors really made sense. So just think white with red is purple. And then if it starts with red in the abbreviation, that's going to be your solid red wire, white is white, and then black is black for the wires. Look at the little diagram that's on the relay. This is going to help you out, and also reference the drawing I put up on screen. Eventually going to zip tie these wires. So after verifying that the pinout on the relay matches my jumper harness color codes, I am going to put yet another piece of heat shrink on here. And then after I shrink these down, I'm going to cover it in electrical tape, like so. That'll also keep them from pulling out because it helps capture the wire. But just to be even more paranoid about this, I'm going to get my electrical tape out and put some tape around it, like that. Leave these loose so that you can zip tie them and the bike. Now I got to do is install this on the Classic 350 and we're all done. All you got to do is take your white wire that you just made the jumper for and just look at the back side of the connector, find the white wire, and then just connect it in. Do the same thing with the black wire, which on the 4-pin connector on the Royal Enfield side of the wiring harness is right beside the white one. Can't miss that. Then the red with the white stripe goes to the red wire. Can't miss that. And the white with the red stripe, which is on the bottom there, well, he goes in next. And that is it. And those seat in there nice and tight. But the thing is that they could pull out easily because it's not a connector. There's no, there's no catch like the original relay has. So before we button this up, let's test it real quick. Hear it flashing at a normal rate. It's not going tick, 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 tick. Fixed. Let's get it tucked in there away so it's nice and safe. Now what I want to do is neaten this up a bit. And I'm going to put some zip ties on here to keep the wiring harness nice and bundled together. What I did is I've actually got some zip ties that go through the tab on the factory Enfield plug. And they're held on by other zip ties, but it can't physically pull apart because they're all captured in on each other. Then I just clip off the excess bits. Now this I will wrap in tape just to protect it. But I think you will see that I have earned my street cred for jerry-rigging something. There is a big old space behind the toolkit here that this will fit in very easily and not be in the way of anything or rattle or whatnot. And then I'm just gonna fish that in there. And then I should be able to just close up the cover. Make sure my, my battery tender lead is coming out the way it's supposed to. Boom. Clean up my fingerprints. Ultimate test here. Right signal. Left. Hazards. Starts and runs. Everything works. Sweet. So if you're handy, how much money can you actually save doing this? Well, that's a good question because some people are pretty resourceful, but even if you shop on eBay, the factory LED indicators, mind you, they don't sell a factory accessory headlight. You'd have to find the OEM part number and figure out whether or not your version of the Classic can use it because they changed the wiring harness. I'm pretty sure it's got a 4-pin connector for the LED on the newer Classics. But if you have the halogen in there, it's a no-brainer. So it's about $100 plus shipping, give or take, depending upon whether you buy the kit from Hitchcock's in the UK, have it shipped to the US, you buy it from Baxter Cycles, or you get it from your local dealer. And if you aren't handy enough to install it, plus you have to take the nacelle loose at least and move it up to get the factory indicator kit on, you're easily gonna be probably, let's say, $150 into it. With the parts I've spec'd out, just the parts alone, you're gonna be roughly $77, give or take. So you have a savings on parts, but you're getting more for your money because you're gonna be upgrading the headlight, the running light, or the trim lights that are on the nacelle. You're also going to be upgrading the indicators, which was the whole point, and the tail light. If you include another roughly $50 on top of that, we'll call it $80. 77, we'll round it up to 80. If you go all in, which would include scrounging for tools, because I already have the tools, but we're talking about the little connectors, the heat shrink, the jumper wire, all of that stuff, you're going to be about 130 bucks into this. I bet all in with labor at the dealer just to do the indicators plus the cost of the OEM Royal Enfield turn signals, you're going to be 200 bucks easily. And then you got to make an appointment and all that kind of stuff. This you can do at home. So it's definitely worth the money. And depending upon your scrounging ability, you might even find a better deal. It's a win-win as far as I'm concerned. Just be handy, be confident, and do the work yourself. It's the whole point of DIY, man. So here we are at the end of the video. And as you can see, we have LED lights, an easy, very affordable upgrade. If I wasn't filming this, man, it'd take like 35, 40 minutes tops. If you enjoyed this, I hope it saves you money and you try it yourself, at least some part of it. Every bulb on this bike now is an LED and no Hyperflash, no resistors required. It was very easy to do. Anybody can do it and you can do it too. Thank you everybody for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope this helps you out. I hope this saves you money. If you found it useful, go ahead and subscribe. Give me the like, the old thumbs up, and click on the bell notifications so that the algorithm knows that I exist and gives people, a notice that, hey, Mike's putting out new videos. And if you see anything that you would like to get, check out the links below in the description. I've got affiliate links there to Amazon, and everything that I've used is listed there below. And until I see everybody again, ride safe.